Well, good day, everybody. Welcome to the 20s podcast. This is a resource for young leaders trying to navigate their way through the journey of church work. This is a place where we get honest, we get very practical, and we just hope that it helps you along the way. Let's get into it. What's going on, podcast family? It's Tyler Wooten as always. Hey, so honored you would take another moment to listen and to just lean into this conversation. And we just truly hope and pray, the team and I here, that this equips you, encourages you, resources you as you continue to navigate leadership in your 20s. Because your boy knows leadership is hard enough, but especially that first decade or so of leadership, it just has natural challenges. But I'm here today with the one and only Pastor Ryan De La Rosa. Hey, bro, say what's up to the fam.
What's going on, fam? How we doing? My name's Ryan. Nice to meet you guys. I'm looking forward to this.
I love Pastor Ryan so much, man. We go back at this point, and he just exited his 20s, and he is, 30 now. Welcome to the Dirty 30s Club.
30 and thriving, bro. 30
yes,
and thriving.
yes. Absolutely, man. I have so much respect for you and your leadership, and of course, we're boys, and I love you dearly, and we're family. But I've also gotten the honor and the opportunity to partner with you in your ministry on multiple occasions. And he pastors an incredible ministry based there in South Texas in the RGV area called Marked. And if you just want to be inspired by somebody who has incredible vision and an incredible work ethic to go along with that, and character, of course, and a true passion and love for Jesus and his people, look up Marked RGV. Also, he has an incredible devotional called Marked. As you can tell, he is marked by this word marked, which I love. It's a powerful word and concept, and I had the honor of writing the foreword for that. And he's also a realtor. He's an entrepreneur in that area and crushing the game. He also doesn't just lead these organizations and business. He also serves on multiple teams there, worship, and the list goes on down there at Cross Church, an incredible ministry. And do I stop there? Do I keep going with everything else you're involved with, or is that is that sufficient? I mean, you are just doing so many things for the kingdom and for so many of God's people, man. And I'm pumped to jump straight into this conversation, if that sounds good with you.
Dude, let's do it for sure. I'm excited.
Come on. Well, I was thinking, man, just a handful of leaders who, are just, in that first, I'm not even going to say you're in your first season because you've been around the game for a minute, but just who isn't too disconnected from that first season. I would say the same thing about myself. Here I am going on 33, and so I remember just like it was yesterday what it was like to lead, in your 20s, and just the challenges and the things that come with that. And so I was thinking about a handful of people who just have a good grasp on that. And man, of course, you came to mind immediately. And I just want to ask you, man, I want to kind of walk you through just some dialogue on just a couple essential things that we need to have when it comes to leading in our 20s. And those of you listening to this, that these principles still apply when you're, in your 70s, leading. However, there's just a couple things that I really feel like we need to lock in on when it comes to leading in your 20s. So, brother, what was the first thought that you had? The very first thing, maybe not of the utmost importance necessarily, but just one of the couple things that you thought of when it comes to leading in your 20s. What's an essential?
I think as between 20 to 29 years old, you're really trying to find yourself, and you're really trying to build yourself and having yourself ready to get into your 30s. And I think one of the characteristics that every leader needs in his 20s, in her 20s, is vision.
Yeah.
The Bible says that the people perish without vision, and I truly believe that vision is so important, and it is one of the biggest, if not the greatest, necessity that every leader needs. And I like when you can be led by someone who has vision.
Mm.
All of these things that you've mentioned are things because of vision. They are responsible because I've entrusted the Lord to say, God, can you give me something that I can handle? But can you also give me the vision that you have for my life to steward? And every leader, whether you're a believer or not a believer, they do carry vision. They have vision to become a successful entrepreneur. They have vision to become a great leader in their families, in their home, in their businesses. And I believe with all of my heart that the reason why so many leaders do not succeed in their life is because they don't have vision. Every year, I always take the beginning of every year, whether it be in real estate or with church, to do a vision board.
Yes, talk
Like
about
this
that.
is what this is something that I always do every year. And basically, you just get a piece of cardboard,
Okay.
you get a magazine, and you just cut up. And you just kind of declare and you kind of profess that this is what my year is going to look like. This is the vision that I have for my year. And last year, my vision was to become an author, and that happened.
Mm-hmm.
And I truly believe that when you give power to the vision that you want to set forth in your life, it will come to pass because this is where you see yourself going, but you have to get there. It's not so much as you just saying, okay, well, this is what I see, and I'm just going to let it come to me. Absolutely not. You have to work for the vision that you have. You have to work for the vision that's been given to you. If you serve in church, you're serving under a leadership. You're serving under the vision of your leadership. You have to work with your pastor, with your church community to be able to steward the vision that God has given them.
Yes.
If you're in a business, you have a vision to reach numbers, to reach goals, to reach an influence, to reach masses of people to buy your product, to look into you, to say, hey, listen, why is it that I could count on you? You have to envision yourself, but you have to give them the work. You have to give them the ethic. They have to be able to say, I can choose this person because they put in the work, they put in the time, they are
Mm.
responsible. If they can handle their own vision, that means that I can trust them with my business. I can trust them with my work. I can trust them with my company.
Yes, exactly. Because a byproduct of vision is discipline. I
Absolutely.
talked about this last time on the podcast, but show me somebody with it was a different podcast. Show me, show me somebody with no vision. I'll show you someone with no discipline, and vice versa. Show me, you said it best, man. The Bible, teaches and preaches itself. The people perish without vision. They run without restraint. They have no confines or discipline to their life. And I love how you're going old school, man, with an old school vision board. There's power in that. It's not some weird, like, wizardry type stuff. I've talked to some Christians before, and they're like, "Man, I don't want to do that. I just want to solely get in prayer." I'm like, completely agree with that. You should start. Everything should start bathed and bathed in prayer. Absolutely. But the way that God set up our brain, and we don't have really time to really get into this, but there's something called a reticular activating system, an RAS, and you drift towards that which you are familiar with as well, the law of familiarity. And usually the law of familiarity, goodness, that's a word. Usually it means that you drift toward that which you are comfortable with, but there's something in our mind, or our brain, once again, called an RAS, and it's a little pea-sized thing set up in the middle somewhere, and it's the thing that allows us, or kind of motivates us, to drift towards that which we are subconsciously processing. If we think about
Mhm.
our mind, our cognitive, our conscious, rather, is like the captain of the ship, and our subconscious is like the crew of the ship. And even when the conscious or the captain isn't working, the crew is still at work because of the order that the captain told it to pursue. So that's what the RAS does. And so my point with all that, I encourage you to go study it. I'm not going to geek out too much more, but the point of a vision board is this: if you see it consistently each and every day, you are subconsciously making decisions out of a place of discipline and motivation, drifting towards that which you have become familiar with. So if you have a magazine article cut out and it talks about being an author, You see that consistently, and you don't realize you are making subconscious decisions and you are disciplined in greater ways because you have become familiar with that thing. Now we could talk much more about this, but it is just a fascinating way that the Lord has set up our human brain to drift
Mhm.
towards that, so having an old school vision board, having a word for the year. I'm like you, we take, a time at the beginning of each year or at the end of the year prior and just seek a word and have that word consistently in front of us. And I've went old school as well, written out um paragraphs of what I desire for my future, what I sense for my future, and I write it. This is a good exercise. I write it as if I were living it real time. That's an exercise I do with some of my clients. I encourage the vision board concept as well, but the point is having it in front of you consistently. And it's not some weird wizardry stuff. It's just it's just it's effective. And of course, like I said, not ever negating or neglecting prayer. You're exactly right. So
Yeah.
having vision. So how would you say you kind of gather's not the right word, but um, gain that vision? How do you obtain it? What do you do? Is it prayer? Is it just being motivated by the last book you read, watching a show? I mean, what is kind of bring some of that spiritual a part into it as well, and kind of break down some of the practical things that you do. What does it look like for Ron De La Rosa to get vision for his life, specifically in the year coming up?
That's such a good question because this is where relationships are so important. I always surround myself with people who can empower me to have vision for my future. This is why so many people die, not to not having vision, but they also die relationally because they don't choose to surround themselves with people who can feed into their potential. And I'm just going to honor, I really want to take the time to honor my pastor, Pastor Abram,
Yes.
because when I was young, he fed into me vision. He fed into me ideas. He fed into me, sermons and podcasts and books and pastors that I was never introduced to when I was little. And because of all of these men and women of God, they were able to feed into me. It's like, hey, I can do something like that. Hey, I can write a book like that. Hey, I can host a conference and build a clothing brand like that. And it's just like, for
Mhm.
example, our relationship between me and you help inspire me to keep going and keep pushing, regardless of how I'm feeling. And that's why I think it's so important to have vision, and not just to have vision, but to also have relationships who can help push you
That's
to the
right.
next level of your life. I remember when we first did our first call during Nights of Impartation, you had spoken an encouraging word over my life, and you said, God's just ready to take you bigger and higher.
Mm.
And to me, that moment, it marked me because that's when we started our internship program for Mark. And because
Mm.
of all of that, you gave me vision, you helped give me vision, and you pushed me to become better, wiser, stronger, and to keep going when I didn't want to. And a lot of times, I'm sorry, I'm getting over this little cold here.
Brother,
But
I'm covering up my mouth, leaning away from the mic, clearing my throat. It's that
right,
season. It's wild.
put your mask on, bro. I don't want you to get sick.
Leave me alone.
I'm joking, but I think it's important though, Pastor Tyler, that when we want to have vision, not only is it important that we surround ourselves relationally with the right people, but we have to ask God for the vision for our life. So often there's this old quote that I'm sure you're well aware of, but it says, tell God your plan. Like, I'm sorry, the way to make God laugh is to tell him what you're doing.
Right, right.
And I think that's just one of the most funniest quotes ever. But it's true. We have a plan for our life. And
Mhm.
sometimes we don't know what we're doing. But when God grabs a hold of us, when a person that we never expected to come cross paths with us ends up coming into our life, vision is ignited,
Exactly.
vision is stirred, vision is doing things that we didn't think we were going to do, but I'm going to have the power, the faith, the hope to do those things. And it's not, we like to make vision such a very, I wouldn't say a disorganizational thing, but there is organization in vision. Vision just doesn't come out of nowhere. Vision doesn't just say, "Oh yeah, I'm just going to do this today." No, like you said, vision takes discipline, and you have to be able to have the discipline to have the vision, to carry the vision, to steward the vision.
That's right.
Eventually, if you're not careful, your vision will blind you, and that's where pride comes in, because you think you're all that. You think you're going to be the hot shot. If you do this, that is not the case. We have to learn to be humble. We have to learn to honor. And in that, we have to be careful that it doesn't blind us to the point where we lose our vision.
It's so true, which is why it's so important to have people around you. And here's the thing, just like you said, God can use people sometimes, oftentimes to speak, vision into your life, whether it's from just an encouraging word or a word of prophecy. But he also, through the vision that he gives you, he will also use that vision to rally people around you. Because
Yeah.
in Habakkuk 2, it talks about writing the vision, making it plain. And then, in other words, and it goes on to talk about like the right people, when they hear it, they'll begin to rally, right? And so
Hmm.
you get surrounded. Here's the good news about vision from God is that, or just any vision at all, it will rally people around you. But of course, we're kingdom people. So we believe that God speaks a clear vision on our life. So we get a God vision for our lives, not just a good vision, but a God vision. It will rally the right people around us. So for those of us who, are listening to this today and you say, man, I don't have people, man, just I encourage you to get vision for your life and watch what God will send your way. He'll send you people.
Hmm.
Because people are always our greatest resource, our greatest asset, encouragement, right? And we are built for connection. And so, man,
Yeah.
vision does wonders in our lives. That's such a good point, and I know you and I could talk this point all day long. I keep telling people that I talk to, I'm like, "Man, 10 minutes. We're gonna go 10 minutes." And I'm like, "Man, I keep getting these preachers on these calls." And, two preachers talking, we can't go 10 minutes. We talk 10 minutes on our favorite coffee, right? So
We'll
so
talk hours. Like if you mean you, if we were just to sit down and honest conversation with Pastor Tyler and Ryan, dude, that'd be like the best conversation ever.
so maybe we should come back and do a long format. That'd be a lot of fun. I hear
That would
that's
be.
a hot thing nowadays. Okay, excuse me. So number 2, what's the second leadership essential that you would say is important to have?
Honest, I think the second most important thing to have is having accountability. If
Yeah,
you are not submitted and if you're not under a covering that can help you grow, you will eventually do whatever you want to do and you will get in trouble. I think during my years as a 20-year-old, I always wanted covering. I always wanted mentorship. I always wanted someone to help me grow. And there were seasons where I didn't have a lot of people. There were seasons where I just kept doing the same thing over and over again. And I found myself in such a dark place where I needed not only the Lord, but I needed someone to come in and help me. And I really do believe that it's very important that as a young leader, if you are planted in a church, I would encourage you to stay planted until God has called you to go somewhere else.
that's good.
But here's one of the things that I've seen, Pastor Tyler, that a lot of times, whenever, going back to vision really quickly, whenever people have a vision for their life saying, this is what I'm called to do, I'm going to do it regardless of who says no. Well, hold on. If you cannot accept someone's no, then you're not really ready to become a leader. A
Mhm.
lot of times that's constructive criticism. That's staying under accountability. That's staying under, you're submitting yourself under a healthy leadership that knows the rights and wrongs for you.
That's
And
right.
I'm going to use this story just because it recently happened. But I had a young man who was in his 20s, and he had a vision for his life. He was called to preach, he was called, to pastor, and he says, I'm going to be a great leader. And I said, great, that's awesome. I can't wait to see that, but you're not ready for it. And he looks at me very perplexed, and he's like, well, what do you think? Like, why am I not ready? Like, what is it about me that you don't see? It's like, because you get offended for everything.
Yeah.
Everything you say doesn't make sense.
It's a
You have
character thing.
no, yeah, it's a character thing.
It's
It
not
goes
so much
on character.
gifting or even anointing. It's just the right time on when you're appointed to do it. And God is so good to send pastors in our lives, to be able to have some insight to our character. And, because there's protection in covering. You weren't doing it to hold them back, like just out of a weird, vendetta type thing. You were doing it. It was protection. It was like,
Yeah.
hey, man, if you step out now, you'll crush the thing, or the thing will crush you. It's
Hmm.
protection.
And sometimes people don't really listen. You know what I'm saying? It's like this is where maturity and this is where character comes in. But again, I had told him, I don't think you're ready to become a pastor. I don't think your character is at the level that you say that you are, because everything that is voiced out of your mouth is not what your actions reflect. You get offended easily. You like to argue. You like to win the argument, and your anger shows more than peace. So of course he just looked at me with this face like of confusion. I'm like, but if you feel like you're ready, by all means, I will bless you out and I will thank you for your service, and you can do whatever you want to do.
Sure.
And often, and this is what eventually what happened was that he ended up becoming a youth pastor, and shortly after he stepped down 2 months because he couldn't handle the
That's
responsibility
right.
and the load
The
of
weight.
what
Yep.
his vision that he supposedly got. And so, if you're a young
Wow.
leader out there and you're hearing this, I want to just encourage you, please submit to your covering. And if you feel like your boss, your pastor, your leader is undermining your value, think of it as you're not ready. Or if you feel like they really are undermining your value, pray about it, give it to God, and transition to a church where you feel like you can be valued.
Yeah, that's right. There are those situations too. Absolutely.
Yeah, and then you never know the situation until you ask. And so many times leaders do not want to ask, but that shows responsibility of a good character. What
Sure.
is it about me that you don't see, or is it me? Or you have so many people that can ask you those questions, and if the leader is honest, if the leader is very sincere, if the leader is very straightforward and say, well, listen, you're not ready. That's why I'm saying no for you to go preach somewhere. Well, you know what? You're not ready. You don't have the finances to sustain a clothing business. Well, you know what? You're not ready because you don't have the literary experience, but you don't also have the experience in life to write a book. There's always a reason for them to say no. And that's what's being accountable. That's what accountable is. Saying no is not saying no to your future. It's just saying no in the moment.
That's right. Timing.
I've had so many people tell me no. And of course, my pastor said, no, you're not ready. No, we don't want you to do that just yet. No, we feel like that's not for you at this time. And looking back at it now, it's like, God, you were developing me. God, you were helping me become, and you were helping me grow. And I'm still in the process of growing. I still have plans. I still have projects that I want to get done. But at the end of the day, I have to submit to the no, and I have to submit to the yes.
That's right. That's incredible. Absolutely, man. And I'm 100% with you. And here's the thing for those listening who, man, you're like, I leaned into a pastor when they said no, and to this day, you're convinced that they got it wrong. Here's the good news about God is that God saw your hearts to be held accountable and to submit to covering, which is seemingly is a Christian cuss word now, submission. But
Mm-hmm.
God will reward you for those days when your heart was pure to submit. You're not going to miss the will of God for your life because you had endeavored to, have that type of covering. God's going to pay you back. God's just so good and so gracious. He'll make up the time lost. Just keep your heart pure. Submit and I'm like you. There have been times that I've pursued something when I out of timing and out of
Mhm.
covering. And man, when you can pursue something under covering in the right time, there's just a blessing that comes with it that cannot be supplemented simply by skill set. Look, you might have all the skills that it takes. We're praying through some stuff right now, and we feel like, man, because of experience, because of the training and the covering that I've had, I feel like there are some things that I could, but should I? You know, am I ready? Is
Yeah.
my character ready? And like you said, you talked about the load. It's weight. You might be able to handle certain responsibilities, but there's a weight that comes with the next season, and the timing of it is so key. And oftentimes, God will send you pastors and fathers and mothers and coverings that will continue to help you discern the timing of the season. Everything has a time, right?
Yeah.
And so, man, that is such a brilliant point, and I have about 18 files that have opened up in my mind, in your response, that we might need to just save for another day. And brother, any closing remarks? Any just words? Quick word of encouragement to those leading in the 20s. I know you kind of just hit some stuff, but just any thought whatsoever you just want to leave for those who are out there, maybe even struggling with vision, or struggling with the accountability piece, and which I understand, because there has been some pain and misstewardship when it comes to covering, and I even sense that even prophetically right now there are some watching this or listening to this that are like, man, I tried to stay covered, but I was done wrongly, and um, I mean, the point still remains
Mhm.
that we need to have covering, but I sensed that, there are two different ways we could take that point, which you hit on a lot of that. So any words of encouragement, any closing remarks?
Yeah, I would just say, in agreement with you, there's always gonna be some hurt because of our covering. And I remember at one point, my old senior pastor told me no to receive mentorship from my old youth pastor, and that hurt me, and I felt like, well, you don't want me to grow anymore. And eventually, I did it, under unforeseen circumstances because I needed mentorship at that moment and that season. But if you're listening, to the sound of my voice or Pastor Tyler's voice, and you feel like you're being hurt, or you feel like what you're experiencing in church or in business or wherever you're at, whatever you're doing as a leader, I just want to remind you and encourage you that God is your vindicator, and
Mm,
He does care for you a lot. And I don't know why that word, God is our vindicator. God will fight for us. You are not alone. He says that He will never leave you nor forsake you, and He is with you till the end of the days. And if you are right now experiencing church hurt because of your covering, I would encourage you to give it to the Lord, and I would start praying, and I would say, God, where is it that you want me to go? If you do not want me to be here submitted to this covering anymore, please close it and direct me to a church that will love and appreciate and cover me and will help me grow as an individual. And I can guarantee you, if you are faithful with the Lord, and I know the Lord is faithful to us, He will answer our call, and He will do that.
mhm.
Sometimes we just need to say, God, I'm tired. Close this door. And I can guarantee you that God will close the door. And we just got to be waiting on God, and we got to be patient about it. But for every young leader out there trying to do, who they want to, like, trying to strive to be the leader that they want to be, trying to strive to be the preacher and the entrepreneur and everyone that they're called to be in the Lord, do not give up.
Mm,
There is hope for you. If you have not seen it now, you will see it in your 30s. And even if you don't see it in your 30s, you'll see it in your 40s.
mm.
God always takes His time for His masterpieces, and God's best work is always seen in the dark. Always remember that.
So good. Trust the process. Amen. A great book, great resource to read. Tell of Three Kings. The Tell of Three Kings. Love that. We could talk. a whole nother episode on that book. Pastor Ryan, I love you, brother. Thank you so much for taking your time today and just instilling your wisdom and, revelation, in us. And was just really encouraged by this call. Really appreciate you.
Of course, my mind. I appreciate you. I love you. I honor you. I respect you. I have so much. Sorry about that. Let me, it always takes a bad moment to ruin, but I appreciate you, bro. I love you, man. I'm so thankful for you. And I'm so thankful that God is just blessing you. And I'm really excited to hear who's going to be blessed from this podcast. Thank you so much for having me. I honor you, like I said. And thank you, thank you, thank you.
Hey, feelings mutual, man. I can't wait to be with you guys here later on this year. It's going to be a good time.
I'm excited and I'm pumped.
Y'all be sure to connect with Pastor Ryan on all the platforms. You can just Google his name and it'll pop up. So I almost made a dumb.
No, really, my number will pop up too, and everything will pop up. Just Google my name.
Maybe his mugshot too. No, I'm just kidding. That's me.
No.
Well, hey, everybody, thank you so much for jumping on the 20s podcast. Again, we just hope and pray that you were encouraged and can't wait to see you next time. Peace.